We're about to go live.
Well, you're gonna watch me chewing live then.
Okay. Before we start, there's chocolate right here if anyone needs it. And I'm going to call the January 11th Committee of the Whole to order. Reverend Mack will be right here. So the first item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda and.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
before we move to that motion, I'm not sure if it changed, but on my agenda, item 7D did not have a listing for whether it was information or action, and I wanted to make sure we clarify that before we adopt the agenda.
7B or 7D?
D is in dog.
D is in dog. It should be action.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
it
we
should
need to
be
change
action.
that?
Well, it's left blank, so if we're in agreement that it says action, then when we adopt the agenda, it's an action item.
That,
It didn't on mine, which is why I wanted to bring
yeah,
it
it
up.
doesn't on mine
But-
either.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on a sec. So the question is item 7D an action item? Dr. French, that was your item, so you had your hands up.
Yes, it is an action item, and I had another question about the agenda.
Okay, so maybe somebody can make one motion to add that, because there's another item. Yes, Dr. French, your question?
My question is, can we move the administrative content to public content since those are all public documents?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Not the executive, of course.
Say that one more time.
May we move the administrative content to the public content?
What item are you talking about?
I was talking about the whole agenda, except because everything that I looked at looked like it was public documents.
Okay, I'm confused about what you're asking to do.
Okay, so for instance, item 5A, the superintendent's report has administrative content document that's being presented. Can we move it to the public portion of?
It will be added to the public part of the agenda once we've
Can the public
reviewed
see
it.
the administrative content?
They can see the once the board has reviewed those items, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Postaway, then all of that is made public, but the board is to see it first. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So
So
what
those
that means is
items-
at the end of this meeting, when you click onto this, staff will have loaded that document up into the public board docs.
Correct?
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
It may take until morning to do that, but they are moved
To the public.
immediately on the next workday.
Okay, then the other item is that when we were setting the agenda, we forgot to put public comment. So I was going to ask that, and Julie's added it here, that we add item 4B as public comment. So perhaps I could have a motion to add 4B as public comment and then add action to item 7D.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I move that we adopt the agenda with the following changes. Item 7D is clarified as for action, and we add an action item or an information item 4B for public comments to be received.
so the motion has been made. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay,
I do have a question.
okay.
I don't see a review of the minutes from the last committee of the whole.
Oh, we missed that. Dr. Postaway?
It occurs at the business meeting because you don't take any official action at this meeting. So when you get your packet, that's a great question. When you get your packet for the January 25th business meeting, we'll have your minutes there because nothing that you do in the committee of the whole is actually official because your vote always goes to the board meeting. So it's been our practice to put the committee of the whole minutes into the board meeting, which you couldn't possibly have known because in December we combined the two meetings. So,
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we had a motion and a second. Julie, are we going to vote? All right, so Julie's going to have it on the board docs for us to cast our vote. And I don't know, Ms. Coakley, are you able to vote via board docs or do you want to do a voice vote for approving the agenda with those two changes?
I was able to vote.
Good.
via
Great.
board doc.
Hey, awesome. Okay, so that motion passes and the agenda has been changed. The next item 2C is I need a motion to convene an executive session to consider items covered by attorney-client privilege. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of convening an executive session signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Okay, we're going to go into executive session. And we'll stay here. into our open session. There are 2 items in executive session with no action. We have review of public comment. Ms. Waters?
Thank you. We received public comments, about 5. They were all pertaining to the same matter, which is COVID-19 of a varying nature. We have received many comments from the public via email, the board members as well as the district. And please know that this is top of mind for everyone and that we are concerned as you are about this pandemic. Following the public comment section, Dr. Postaway is going to give an update on COVID-19 around the notification process, which is where the primary number of comments lie, which is people asking questions about how they can be notified when someone in their child's class has tested positive for COVID-19. So I hope that your questions will be answered, but if not, you certainly know where to find us. You can continue to call us, email us, and then also submit public comments for the meeting at the end of the month.
Thank you. Our next item is 5A, the superintendent's report, and she's got a COVID-19 update. I will just point out we're about an hour behind, and I, in the vein of Todd here, gonna see if we can get everything covered, but catch up our time.
Yes, ma'am. Let's move to the next slide, which is the recent disease activity by county. Board members have a copy of the slide deck at your nameplates if you want to make any notes. We are high in, as is the rest of the state, across the board. We talked about the high incident rate, and I'll say just a little bit more about the agreements that we reached this summer when we opened school. Next slide gives the board the detail on the COVID positive cases the week before winter break, and then the week when we came back from winter break. So we see that on January 4th, there were 27 students and 15 staff members. Staff members include teachers and any other staff members. So students and staff together in our schools right now who are coming in person are about 40,000. The count for students includes virtual students as well as in-person students. So we have about 6,800 staff members, a little over 6,800, if that gives you some idea. So we saw that we are seeing the spike that people predicted. We will note the significant increase in the adults who came back from winter break with COVID. Some schools had no adults, no staff members who were COVID positive. But across the district, we had 15 the first day, 30 the second day, 15 the third day, and then we're falling off. There are those who say we should have waited 3 days. And when we looked at patterns elsewhere, however long you stay out when you first come back, you see these kinds of spikes because the community spread rate is so much higher than the spread rate in our district. Dr. Linda Bell from DHEC and Molly Spearman were on a call with superintendents last Thursday. In that call, we've seen this information in the media. Dr. Bell, emphasized that transmission rates in the community are much higher than in schools, adding that DHEC can find no evidence whatsoever that there's a significant problem with COVID transmission in schools, but we are watching that very closely. So the next slide gives you an idea of what student attendance looked like the week before winter break and the week after winter break. If we look at the first set of graphs, that's the Monday before and after winter break. So if we look at the elementary on December 14th, we had about 6% of students were absent. Now, on any given day, on other years when there is no COVID, we run about an average daily 5% absent rate. Just so you know, we run about a 95% attendance rate, which is a 5% absent rate in a normal year. So if you compare that to January 4th, we see that we had about 4.5% increase in student absences at the elementary level. We had about a 4% increase at the middle school level in absences that first day back. And from the Monday before to the Monday after winter break, there was a 1% increase in absences at the high school level. So if we look at Wednesday of last week, which was the last day that our staff did this kind of analysis before we put this presentation ready, got this presentation ready for the board. At the elementary level, there was a difference of not quite 3%. At the middle school level, there was a difference of maybe 2.5%. And at the high school level, the attendance rate was actually a little better last Wednesday than it was the Wednesday before winter break. So it looks as though the attendance rates are leveling off as well, although we realize there are some parents who would really like to keep their students home for a little while longer. If we move on to the next slide, then I told you I would review quickly with you what we said we would do. The agreements we reached with the board this summer were these. First, when the school year started, we made the commitment that we would monitor the data closely, confer with medical advisors, and close individual classrooms or schools as warranted. Now, no one in the community with whom we work has advised us that a whole-scale shutdown is necessary. So how does this work? If there's one person who's COVID positive in a classroom, that causes us to pay attention. Depending on the classroom, that classroom may close if it's just one person, depending on the circumstances, and that has happened. We have closed classrooms because the circumstances in that classroom warranted closing with just one person. If there are two individuals who are COVID positive, the immediate question that our contact tracers ask is whether there's a relationship between those two individuals that would indicate that the spread occurred in school. If that's the case, that's another reason to consider closing the classroom. If there are 3 positive cases, the moment our people see that, then they confer with medical experts and the decision is made about whether or not to close a classroom. We'll try to get that down in writing because we know you're getting asked about that and we want you to have something that you can share in writing. So we have created a written statement. We want to make sure that DHEC is comfortable with our releasing it because DHEC doesn't, they advise, they don't tell us what to do. At the bottom of this slide is the reference that Ms. Waters made to notifying parents. I'm going to show you what the federal guidelines say in just a moment, but we are working now to try to determine how and under what circumstances we can notify parents when there are positive cases in a classroom, even one positive case. It will be very difficult to do this at the middle and high school level because if you think about it, kids change classes every period. And if you think about going back through the daily schedule for a student and then getting notifications out to all those parents between the time we get the information about the positive case and the start of school the next morning, you can just imagine how complex that is. So we're going to start at the elementary level. We reached out to the districts that we understood were doing something like this. They actually asked the schools to do this work. And we don't want to put this additional work onto schools. Schools have done an incredible job turning on a dime, responding to everything we've asked them to do. So we're going to talk with with all principals, but certainly talk with elementary principals in the morning about how we can notify parents without overburdening schools. There may be a way to do that. They can help us with it. It may result in paying overtime to someone who has access to Power School. So, there are a limited number of employees who can get into the system and make the notification. So we're talking with elementary principals in the morning about how we could start that at the elementary school so that anytime there is one positive case, elementary, from preschool up through the highest grade in an elementary school or in a Montessori school, upper L would be 6th grade, would know. Or if you're in a school where a group of students stays together for the most part all day long, that's not a difficult notification. Again, we're meeting with principals in the morning about how we can figure this out. We didn't want to announce it to the board and have our principals and teachers hear that and wonder what the implications were for them. But today we want parents to know, particularly parents of young children, that we are going to, as quickly as possible, begin notifying them if there's even one positive case. Why the change in our position? The next slide shows you the federal guidelines, and board members have all seen these before, as well as the state guidelines that we use. This quote is directly from the federal guidelines, and the question is, may a school disclose the number of students who have COVID-19 to parents and students in the school community without prior written consent? So the pertinent part is in the bold. The example they give is that a school generally could release the fact that 5 students are absent due to COVID-19 without the worry of identifying a particular student. And if you notice on the DHEC site at the state level, if there are fewer than 5 cases, they'll simply say fewer than 5 in an entire school. We think that there's enough movement now in our classes. I showed you the attendance for students. It's fluid in most cases, and here's where a judgment call will have to be made at the school level. But as long as there are multiple students here today and not here tomorrow, and it's not related to COVID, then we think that we can go ahead and notify parents. And we think in most instances, we'll be able to do this with just one case. The underlined sentence, we caution schools to ensure that in releasing such facts, they do so in a way that does not reveal information that alone or in combination with other information would allow a person in the school community to identify the students who are absent due to COVID-19. Early on in the school year, we ran into many people who did not want others to know that they had been had been COVID-19 positive. That doesn't seem to be such a concern. The concern seems to be shifting. If nothing else, we could resort to getting every parent's permission to release the information. So we think we have a way to do this at the elementary level. We're meeting with principals tomorrow, and we will implement just as quickly as possible. The final slide has to do with a very important piece of this puzzle. We have masks, distancing, hygiene, we've increased testing, and now the 5th and final most important piece of this puzzle is vaccinations. We are encouraged, hopeful, and anxious about how quickly they'll be available to us, and Mr. Broe is going to speak to what we have done proactively.
Thanks, Dr. Bosway. As Dr. Bosway mentioned, proactive is the key word here, as well as being poised, ready to deliver the vaccines when available. First off is determining who would get the vaccine first. Phase 1B will include teachers working directly with students and other staff. That other staff has to be determined. We were on a call with the state superintendent and DHEC. There is a lot of discussion over who that exactly is going to entail. We want to make sure we get that right. If we don't get specific direction, we will certainly develop a plan to decide which individuals that would include. Part of the aspect is getting our hands on the vaccine, and we've decided to partner with MUSC. Ellen and I have had a number of discussions with their senior staff to ensure that we've got a plan in place if they're able to get the vaccines for us, and we would partner with them to make that happen. We're very fortunate that we already have a mass vaccination plan in place with DHEC under the Security and Emergency Management Division, Michael Reidenbach's division. And we've actually, 2 years ago, ran an actual mass immunization for the flu shot at Stall High School. And so DHEC has those plans for the 4 high schools. We would enact those plans. So the execution of it would include staffing from the district in support of MUSC, who would deliver the vaccines to our personnel. And we expect that to be free and voluntary. And whenever it does become available, we believe that we could execute that relatively quickly within a couple of days of receiving the information that we can get those vaccines. We would obviously have to do this twice because we have that second phase of the vaccine between 3 and 4 weeks after the first phase. So we'll have to work hard to make sure we've got that lined up as well.
Thank you. And the other thing I will say about that is if we were to find out 1 week that the vaccines would be available to our personnel the following week, we simply want to state tonight that it might be necessary to have an e-learning day because we want to schedule times and run every school staff through, give everyone the opportunity to just show up and get the vaccination instead of trickling people through. So we don't have any definitive information, neither does MUSC or DHEC, about when the vaccines may become available or whether it'll be Pfizer or Moderna vaccines, but we are poised, as Jeff said, to take action with a logistical plan in place. Natalie is working on the legalities so that we will be ready to roll just as quickly as our frontline workers are eligible. So that concludes our COVID update.
Thank you. Oh, do we have any questions of the map?
So, Jeff, is it possible to, under the site consideration, just for D9, 23, and District 3, employees or staff will be able to have a more centralized location? Is that a possibility?
It's a possibility. We'll need to take a look at it again. We've got the plans in place at those 4 high schools, which is why we tapped into those. I did want to take a look at where the teachers live and make that a factor as well. Obviously, determining where they go for a shot. We don't want everyone showing up at a single location and leaving the other 3, with nobody. So we want to take a look at where the teachers live, and that will help us determine if we need to, I think, expand that list from those 4 sites.
Okay, all right, that would be great if we can.
Okay. Dr. French or go around?
I was going to say, just go around the room.
Yeah, Dr. French.
Oh, okay. Yes, so I was wondering I'm glad to hear your update on the notification process that you're looking at, and really glad to hear that you're monitoring things so closely for 1, 2, or 3 cases in a classroom. And I understand that CCSD is basically following the interim guidance from DHEC, and I'm wondering if it wouldn't be helpful just to put that in, take that, what you're following in that, and use it as an administrative rule for a period of time, with going back to update if they change it, of course. It might be helpful just for transparency so people know what's going on, and with the understanding that you do have to make decisions based on the individual cases. But I also wanted to ask, I was wondering in terms of the FFCRA, and you didn't bring this up, but I know it expired at the end of December, and teachers are very concerned about their leave situation, and I've seen that you've updated some of that information for them. I'm wondering, given that the State Department of Education issued an appeal to districts to use our CARES Act money to help people with emergency leave, would it be okay to change the expiration date of our administrative rule covering that leave to the end of March?
I believe what we issued said it would be the extension that we have done, the supports we're providing for our teachers will run through at least the end of March. If that isn't what it said, I'm mistaken, but it was our intent to run it for the full year until vaccines are thoroughly available to everyone. It's our intent to support our personnel who have to be out either because they're quarantined or have tested positive or have an immediate family member.
Right. But that's a little different than the administrative rule.
Dr. Postaway, Mr. Bergman was waving his hand. Did we want
I think from an administrative rule, yeah.
I was just going to confirm that the communication, it is until March 31st, and it will be looked at again if needed.
So that's the whole administrative rule, or just the part that you posted to the teachers?
No, ma'am, we didn't make an administrative rule. We publish to our personnel what we're doing. We don't go through the formal process of we haven't gone through the formal process of making administrative rules for a lot of these things because it's subject to change pretty quickly, but we won't withdraw supports for personnel. So we publish and republish.
I was just referring to the administrative rule that you passed in June that expired on December 31st. Well, you did. You decided to do it. And so I was just wondering if that would be the way that you could extend it. But I'm done.
Got it. Thank you.
Ms. Gracie?
On the e-learning days, Would that just be for those schools that are being used to administer the vaccine, or would
No.
you have to do it for all schools?
The idea would be if District 4 if it's a day for District 4 or for the vaccinations to occur, that if it takes 2 days, suppose we have 5,000 vaccinations to give, and suppose 2,500 can be given a day across 4 sites, we will be really organized to assign people to sites. They'll have a time to go, and in order for us to run everybody through there on those 2 days, half the schools might need to have an e-learning day one day, and the other half the other day, and then we'd need to repeat the process the following month. We really want to make this easy for our personnel to get there, get the vaccines, if they're interested in doing that.
And I was just thinking about, and I know y'all will handle this, giving parents as much time.
Yes, ma'am, that's why we're mentioning it tonight. We'll get 1,000 questions because we've
Right.
mentioned it tonight, but not to mention it seemed even a larger problem.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Charter?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, let's go.
So as we talk about the classroom notification, and I do appreciate where you're headed, but, and I don't want to be critical, but I did talk to districts across the state, and when I tell them that we don't do classroom notification, they look at me like I have 2 heads. It seems pretty standard operating. I didn't realize that until recently, but so it is pretty standard that school districts across the state, small and large, are doing classroom notification. And I would just want to know if we could get a little more specificity around, you said like as soon as possible. We're going to talk to principals in the morning. We need to decide how to do it. It'll be a judgment call. Then you used the phrase most instances. And I really want to know, can we get a little tighter on this? Can we have a plan to do classroom notification? Yes or no? Can it be instituted by Friday? If not, what day? Just because it seems that this is one thing we could get off of our plate.
Yes, Mrs. Coates, that's a really good question, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to point out that until we talk with principals, it's difficult to know exactly what will work. I upset teachers terribly when we let parents know on January 1st that if they wanted to keep their children out the following week, we would count that as a regular, they could make up homework and it would be an excused absence because I didn't check with them first on December 31st and January 1st. So if our people were willing to weigh in on December 31st and January 1st, I know they're going to be willing to weigh in tomorrow morning. So we're going to make sure that we observe the professional courtesy of getting their input, and then we absolutely will create a written statement about what we're going to do. And in most instances means if there's a class that has perfect attendance and there's one COVID positive test, we are likely not going to be able to inform in quite the same way that we would have.
Thank you. So you'll keep us updated after that conversation.
Right, but the likelihood of that happening is very remote.
All right, Ms. Waters?
Just one
The,
quick
excuse me, the likelihood of having perfect attendance at this point in time is very remote. Let me just be clear.
Just one quick question around the statement from Dr. Linda Bell. Is there any way to put statements like that out either on the website, underneath the COVID dashboard, somewhere? Because one of the things that keeps coming back from constituents to me is that they haven't heard this, that, schools are safer than the community. And I know that's what the numbers indicate, but I think people maybe want it plainly stated. I'm just wondering if there's a way to post that somewhere.
Thanks for this suggestion, and I'm sure the communications folks will figure out how to do that in a prominently accessible place.
Yes, I just wanted to know, how were the 4 sites selected for consideration?
Those sites were selected, that was part of the DHEC plan. So when DHEC developed their mass immunization plan, these are the sites they developed. If Michael's in the room, that was it, right, DHEC? So the sites were chosen by DHEC to develop these plans.
Based on?
I think it's based on central locations and proximity to as many people as possible.
Reverend Mack, you have more?
No, just what I asked earlier, one about the site location to Minnesota. And I guess my other question is, why a e-learning day? I mean, can this not be done on a Saturday? And the reason I'm asking this question is because, again, I just feel that as much in-person learning that needs to take place. I'm trying to figure out why is it e-learning day is a possibility.
E-learning day for the teachers who are getting vaccines that day.
I understand
Got
that.
that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I understand that.
I'm putting the possibility out in the atmosphere because we don't know what day we'll get the vaccine. If we get the vaccines on Saturday and Sunday, that'll be perfect. But if they happen to come to us on Wednesday and Thursday, we want to administer them the moment we are told our people can get them. We want to be able, we want to have a plan in place so people know exactly where to go, what their schedule is. And in order to do that, we have to disrupt the school day if it's occurring on a Monday through Friday.
Okay, anybody have a second question or comment? Some of you already had two, so. Erica. Erica, sorry. I haven't had any notes. Let's go, please. So Erica, let's go, please.
No, I'm okay right now, actually.
Good. All right, so we're going to be really quick. My one thing is I say ditto to what Courtney says about that we're safer in schools, getting that out. Dr. France, please.
Yes, I just wondered if we could post somewhere on the website that's pretty obvious what the DHEC rules for excludable conditions, because I think it will really support our nurses who are getting a lot of negative response sometimes when they tell parents that they have to quarantine their children, and it's hard on them. I also think it will make everyone feel a lot safer to know that we're supporting that the parents need to report if their children have any symptoms related to COVID or they suspect COVID, even if they don't have a test done yet, so that the school will know to start working on the procedures we need to do.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sure that Erica Taylor and the communications team are making notes as you're talking. I know that some schools have done that and have done a great job of it. I've seen some really nice messaging from schools. We'll try to step up the effort here as well. And
Anybody else with a second? No? All right.
in closing, I just want to thank everyone for understanding how difficult this is and encourage everyone to thank our school personnel who are out there every single day. They have done an amazing job. It's almost impossible to voice the depth of our gratitude to people who have put children first. They're coming to school because they care about the children they serve, and they're overcoming great anxiety in order to do it. So many parents, every time parents contact us, we say yes, and please contact your school and thank the folks who are there. So thank all of you for letting us, for giving us the feedback you're hearing, and for letting us work to try to come up with some solutions we're not quite ready to describe in detail to you tonight. We'll do it as quickly as possible and get the details out to you.
Please, when you have your call with the, I'll speak on behalf of the board for this, when you have your call with principals and with the nursing staff, share our great thanks and respect that, I mean, they're doing things that other districts have not been able to do. They're making a difference for kids, and we appreciate that. So I look forward to celebrating.
They are.
We're all vaccinated.
Carolyn has a call with teacher representatives this week as well.
Okay, we'll do that too. Okay, on to item 6A, onto the Strategic Education Committee. So I'll let Ms. Herbert take over.
Great, thank you, Kate. So we have two items on the strategic education agenda. Item 6A is an action item pertaining to local board approved courses for 2021-2022. I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Belcher and Ms. Roberts.
Yes. Ms. Roberts, do you want to introduce this item?
Sure, I'm happy to do so. Good afternoon, Chairman Reverend Mack, Vice Chair Ms. Waters, Board of Trustee members, and Superintendent Dr. Postaway. Each year, our schools submit locally designed elective courses and new honors level courses for local board approval to be offered in the upcoming school year. You'll find in your board materials a copy of our middle and high school courses and descriptions that have been submitted by our schools and reviewed and approved by Learning Services. The majority of the courses have previously received board approval, and are now being submitted as renewals. One of those courses, African American Studies, is being submitted as a renewal with an additional request to actually extend its opportunity to be open.
We're having a little trouble hearing you. I don't know if there's something you can do on your side of the mic. Just don't, I know you were speaking specifically about African American history course, so I wanted to make sure the board could hear that.
I think there's some kind of background noise coming from some other place on the, there you go, that's better. There you go. All right, so I'll start back with the African American Studies course. One of the courses is the African American Studies course. This course we're submitting as a renewal with an additional request to extend its opportunity to be open for all of our district high schools based on student interest and school resources. Simmons Pinckney has also requested an 8th grade elective course, not for high school credit. It's Introduction to Leadership, Education, and Training to be approved in order to prepare students for high school JROTC. While locally designed elective courses require only local board approval, courses taken for core area or for career and technology education or CTE credit must also be approved at both the local level as well as the state level. We are submitting 2 such CTE courses tonight, our Real Estate 1 and Real Estate 2. Courses, which if approved by this board, CCSD will then submit those to the State Board of Education for final approval. Real Estate 1 is a previously approved CTE course, and then Real Estate 2 is a new course that will serve as a continuation of our real estate course sequence within the CTE marketing cluster. We do respectfully request the board to approve all of the proposed courses that you have outlined in your materials so that we may offer those courses for the 21-22 school year.
Any question?
Get it out there. I'm looking for approval, please.
I'm going to start with Ms. Coakley. Question?
I'm sorry, was that for me? Okay, that's better. Not right now. I'm sorry. No, I don't have a question at the present moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Coates?
So yes, and I understand, and it's not that I don't support this. I think I probably will. I believe one of the things we need is an extraordinarily diverse library of course options. But I just want to caution staff and the board that we're expanding local courses, and you saw the renewal, and I guess the best thing I can say is we need to be talking about quality over quantity and making sure that this conversation ties into the one we had earlier, that we need to be spending a lot of time on the educational initiatives that have not been delivered appropriately in the last year, the issues that we've had with student achievement. I'm not saying that this would affect that, but I'm going to say that at every turn you want to expand what you do, I want you to stay focused to the teacher staffing and capacity and quality over quantity.
Appreciate the feedback.
Ms. Waters? Ms. Darby? Dr. Frazier?
Yes, I have a question about Holocaust and genocide course, and my other question is the forensic course. How do you come about selecting those courses to add to the list of offerings?
We actually have. I'm sorry.
I know this Holocaust course is now being offered at North Charleston High School, and it's being used as a dumping ground for kids who have nowhere else to go in the curriculum. So how do we make sure that these courses are courses that kids are really showing an interest in, rather than courses that some strenuous force who said this is what we're going to offer?
Mr. Roberts, before you answer, I'm sorry, Dr. Fraser, I couldn't hear you when you said a certain course is a dumping ground. Could you repeat that?
The Holocaust course.
Thank you.
It's being offered up at North Charleston High School, or it was being offered at North Charleston High School. And at the particular time, it was a course that was used to just actually put students in a class just to make sure that we had the numbers so that we could offer it. Students did not really have a choice as to whether they were placed in that course or not. So I want to make sure that we're offering courses that students have shown an interest in, rather than coming up and selecting courses that we feel that they might be interested in, like the forensics and the Holocaust and genocide studies.
We actually do have an annual process where we review how courses were offered previously, and then that determines whether those courses might be put on the docket to be approved for the following year. So we do look at those courses annually. So you might find that some courses were previously approved that might not be on this list this time for approval at specific locations or at all. We do base the courses that go through on school requests. So schools do look at their resources and they think about what the student interest might be, or where they might have surveyed students or something along those lines, in order to determine what those courses would be that they would request local board approval.
Dr. French?
I have I guess a related question to making sure that the courses are offered at all the schools that might have students that want them. And I'm curious, based on what we've learned from COVID, Zoom is a really amazing tool. So for instance, the real estate course isn't planned to be offered at North Charleston High School next year, but if there were a couple of students that wanted to take it, maybe they could Zoom in, register and Zoom in to the course being offered at a different high school. Or CAS, I'm sorry. I'm not sure if it was at CAS or not. It's just a suggestion and to think about.
Appreciate that suggestion. I think our aim this year and next year is to maximize some of our online tools in order to expose more kids to more courses. So appreciate that. Thank you, ma'am.
Madam Chair, I move to call the question. Ready? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you had.
Ms. Coates?
I've already started with me.
Does anybody else? Oh, Reverend Mack, I'm sorry.
So is there any particular reason why it's an elective and not moving forward more as a required study instead? And the only reason why I'm asking is because, again, I'm pulling back from our workshop today. If we're looking at really changing the culture in which we live, that to have a better understanding of background of both cultures, I mean, it's important for us to gain a closer connection, I would say, as kids go through school, go through life, understanding and learning about the history. So, and just not in February, where a project is done on Dr. King or Malcolm X or someone along those lines, and then no longer talk about history or culture. So that was my question.
Sometimes courses are offered as elective courses specifically for the purpose of allowing for diverse teachers to be able to teach those courses. Like, for instance, a course like this could be offered as a social studies elective or could be offered as an English elective, depending on the personnel that might be utilizing that course and depending on the school.
Oh, just to add to Reverend Mack, I think given the board's commitment to cultural competency, I think part of our strategy is not to isolate teaching explicitly about different cultures, but to integrate it into the core curriculum from K to high school. So while African American history is obviously a deep study of a particular community and culture, given the diversity of our community, we need to do that in all of our subject areas. So in science, we're realizing the role that the African American community has played historically in science and moving forward to make it an opportunity. So I want to make sure that I encourage you. I would say I worry about making it a separate African American studies because that might move into a more divisive curriculum rather than making sure that our core curriculum reflects the diversity of this community.
So I appreciate that comment, but would like to see more defined on how you just incorporate that and how that will be spread out. I mean, if what you just said is the angle, then I would like to see that more in detail, because then that will be the ultimate goal, right? To make sure that we reach that across and that we incorporate it in all areas. But this is a good step.
Agreed.
It's been a long time coming.
Agreed. And I think a key component of our ELA curriculum step back is going to make sure that our new English language arts curriculum reflects this.
Thank you.
But I have a legal kind of I guess it's not a legal question, but can a local district put a requirement course for completion of a grade or graduation that's not state mandated? Could we do what he said? Right.
Sure.
Because I don't want to give the impression that we can require courses and we choose not to.
We'll look into it and
If we can't
follow up.
require courses, I want to get into that conversation.
And I will admit, I don't know. It's possible others on the call do, but I think it's probably better to do a little research. Thank you.
Can I just add another question on the call? But what she just said, what Ms. Belcher just said, again, as I asked for more defined detail, if that's what's going to happen across all of these subjects, then that is the route that we really want to go, because we're going to be capturing that clear across the board. So that is ideal. That's why I said I like to see more defined as to how that's going to be accomplished. So that's why I said thank you so much for allowing that to happen in that manner.
We had a motion approved from Ms. Darby and a second by Ms. Green. Should be up for voting.
Oh, thank you. What was that noise?
Gotta get home, you better.
No, it's not getting hot at all. It's still cold in here. Oh, you waiting on me? I'm sorry. My apologies.
He's too cold to think straight.
Yeah, my brain is frozen up.
Poor baby.
Great, we're going to move on to item 6B at this time.
You just want to say that the motion's passed.
Motion's passed, excuse me. Thank you. Okay, now we're moving on to item 6B, and this is just an informational item and an update on local community partners for learning pods. And I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Belcher and Ms. English Watson.
That's right. I'll start first. Just as a reminder to the board, we provided a comprehensive update prior to the holidays on the learning pods. One of the things that we've been advised is that giving out specific information on where the learning pods are located or potentially located is not something that we want to discuss in public. So I just want to put that out as a framing, because this is a board initiated item. The main goal is to make sure that we're answering questions from all of you about our learning pod vision. I am going to turn it over to Ms. English Watson, as well as Mr. Kennedy may step in, because both of them are leading this effort that crosses every department within the district, and I think has been a good effort for us to get a better understanding about the challenges, the structural challenges that we might face if we were going to do something like an extended day, extended year, or wraparound programs. Ms. English Watson?
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mr. Chair, Reverend Mack, members of the Board of Trustees, and Superintendent Dr. Postlewaite. Are we able to pull up the PowerPoint? Is that up? Because I can't see.
We've got it on our left,
We've got it in board docs, so.
Okay. So to support student learning remotely, CCSD is collaborating with community partners to offer safe, established learning pods hosted within partners' facilities. The intent of the pods is to serve 3 to 10 students within small groups in a ratio of 1 to 5 teacher to student ratio, excuse me. The staffing is provided by the Department of Expanded Learning, or some of us may have known it as Kaleidoscope. The students will continue to participate in their daily virtual classes. So I'm going to say this again. They're participating in their daily virtual classes with the CCSD staff present to ensure that they log in successfully, stay focused, and are engaged in their lessons. The staff will also bridge that communication between the pods and their home schools for updates and any assignments that they will need. Students being served in the learning pods will receive assistance with assignments, receive a backpack with grade appropriate school supplies, such as crayons, pens, markers, paper, notebooks, and USB drives. When the students come to the pods, they will be equipped with their own devices that's issued to them from CCSD. We conducted an internet assessment so that we're able to make sure that we do have the broad width that we needed so that the students would be able to log in successfully and stay logged in. In addition to the instructional supports, students, of course, will receive breakfast and lunch that's provided by CCSD Office of Nutrition at the centers. And they also receive social emotional learning coaches from the Department of Alternative Programs. And in addition to that, the Department of Alternative Programs will be doing check-ins on whether additional services are needed as well. Of course, we'll be following the Center for Disease Control and Prevention safety protocols and CCSD safety protocols, which will include wearing of masks, social distancing, hand sanitizers, and sanitizing the tables and surfaces. We will also follow the CCSD safety protocols as outlined by Mr. Reidenbach's department or division as well. As Ms. Belcher mentioned earlier, this is a collaboration across divisions and many departments. And I must say that the Department of Alternative Programs stepped in and helped us tremendously in identifying the students. And Ms. Coker has joined us, and I'm going to ask her to share that experience that they went through in identifying the families and students to be served in the learning pods. Ms. Coker?
Thank you, Ms. English Watson. Good evening. We have 4 teams in the Department of Alternative Programs that we've established with some partners from Title I and some other areas in the district. And those teams are equipped with MiFi devices and a parent survey that we complete. So we meet with a school-based multi-tiered system of support team and identify the families that they're concerned about with being consistently connected to the school, or that are having attendance issues or technology issues. And then we work through that list and we contact those families either via phone or home visit. And we identify what their needs are. And that can be anywhere from if their desire is to stay at home remotely, how do we make sure that they can do that successfully? Or we can refer them to the learning pods. And so we have done some surveying of the families as we meet with them, and we are looking at what their concerns are about returning to school. And overwhelmingly, our parents are concerned about the risk of COVID. 63% of them are reported that's why they're not comfortable having their students in school. A lot of the barriers, though, to the students' academic success is the actual student motivation. That's our highest percentage of the barrier. Followed by technology. So we're doing a lot of work with the families on how to connect to Canvas and making sure that they have their MiFi. And then finally, we're working through what other barriers the family may have. And we're seeing school supplies as a barrier. So we're working to find school supplies for the students, as well as we have a lot of need for housing support and financial support for utility bills and food support. And so we're connecting with our social workers in the schools, the families to those supports. To date, we've met with 102 students and families, and we are continuing that work now. We've finished the work at several schools, and we are just now moving on to 2 new schools this week, and we'll continue to work through schools as we finish the school. We'll add a new school on, and so we're excited about continuing the work with our families and really digging into their needs.
Thank you, Ms. Coker. So as you heard, throughout this process, we have worked through many assumptions and barriers, but we were able to pivot and overcome these challenges. And as we're getting this these pods up and running in the North Charleston area, in this area, we of course will be ready to pivot toward other areas as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Coates?
I have no questions. I do think that it's, and I've got to know that it's probably for y'all as well, to have only 42 out of 270 students currently accessing this, according to the report you gave me. I think that further solidifies that we're going to have to do some very intense in-person education for the next 36 months.
Ms. Waters?
No question.
Ms. Darby?
No question.
Dr. Frazier?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. English Watson, could you walk me through what this program looks like from the day that a student starts? Are they virtual in the beginning? I just need to picture.
Okay. So remember in the beginning of the presentation, I stated that this was focused basically on the students' daily virtual lessons. So when the students arrive at the center, let's say the life of one student walks into the center, he or she will have his breakfast in one area, and then we'll go into an area of another room where there may be, and depending on the room size, because we have to, depending on how many children we can fit in one room, we'll go in there with their device and headset and log into their virtual teacher and their instructional time. The staff would help the students who are in that room make sure they stay engaged, that they stay focused on the lessons that's happening with their virtual teacher. If there are any assignments during the day that needs to be completed, that staff will help guide them through that assignment. But that child is to focus in on their lessons that's being provided by that teacher virtually.
Dr. French?
No, thank you.
Ms. Green?
No.
Ms. Coakley?
Yes, ma'am. I'm just curious to know these learning pods. Do we have any children with special needs? And if we do, how are we handling that? And we have staff that are in place that are working with children with IEPs.
Okay, that's a very good question. As of right now, I do not have any students with special needs on my list that have been identified, but I'm not saying that they aren't. I'm going to look to Ms. Coker's team to see if, and really, without breaking confidentiality information, we would meet the needs of those students as identified, of course, by their IEP, because their instruction is happening virtually. So of course, we would go to the special ed department to make sure that we are following all compliance in serving the students in the pod.
That's correct, Michelle. There's no exclusions. Any student we meet with is offered this opportunity. And we are working, my staff is working with the staff at the centers to provide academic and behavioral support and strategies. And we also are willing to be at the pods for additional support as needed.
Thank you. Last but not least, Reverend Mack.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're
Thank
done
you.
with FEC. We're going to move to other board committees. We have a couple of policies. So Dr. French, all the floor.
Thank you. We have 5 policies to look at today, and they're all action items. Hopefully, these will go pretty quickly. Policy BE is a change in the board meetings policies, and it's on page 3, simply cancellation of meetings. I'd like to entertain a motion.
Can I just ask?
I will second for the purpose of discussion, but I also have a question.
For a modification, since we are looking at this policy, there's something in here that says we start our meetings at 5:15. Obviously, we know that's not true. So can we put something in there that's a little bit more conducive, like, with, let's see, the board meets at the district office on the 4th Monday of each month with open session starting at 5:15, with open session starting to be announced or as announced in the public notice or something along those lines? I mean, because we haven't been religiously meeting at 5:15, is that? Just for a moment, in the past, there was a time when the board met exactly at 5:15. This board primarily has met, we will do executive session before that. And Judge, you're right, sometimes we didn't get there by 5:15. So I think maybe now maybe we could do first reading and then now we could give us some advice for the board. Yeah, I just started it, yeah. I'm okay with it being 5:15, but when I read it and I'm thinking, I didn't even know that was I didn't know that was actually printed somewhere. So,
As the start time?
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And if we are adhering to that, maybe I just wasn't saying it. I mean, you could probably either try to adhere to better, but that means we've got to be more concise in executive session, or maybe now we could give us some advice about what we do appropriate. Yeah, because if we're doing it, I'm not suggesting we change it. I just would always think, I guess I was thinking about it from the time when we get notices about what kind of meeting will start, or, you know, you would say executive session. Right. So maybe it's not something we need to do anything with. Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Hardrick? Any
No questions.
Ms. Coakley?
No questions.
Ms. Coates?
Natalie, you're the originator. What's the purpose of this? I mean, state law says you can't meet unless there's a majority. So, I mean, the cancellation, I'm just wondering why we had to add something. I feel like we've got a lot of work on our plate coming up and some of these changes. Do we really need to be focused on those things?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. That's a fair question. So I think that School Boards Association was getting a lot of questions from other districts with regards to when and how they could cancel a board meeting. And so this was just an addition to the board meeting policy that outlines the specific ways in which a board can cancel a meeting. I don't disagree that you all didn't already know this information, nor were you not already acting pursuant to these outlined rules, but it is nice to have it included in the policy.
Ms. Waters? Reverend Mack?
No question.
Ms. Darby? Ms. Frazier? Or Dr. Frazier?
No questions.
Any other questions? Call the question. All right. All right, thank you for passing the motion, and I'm going to let Ms. Ham introduce items 7B and 7C, which bring us into alignment with federal law, I believe, and maybe we can vote on them together if we get such a motion.
Sure. So these policies are actually identical. One is for students and one is for staff, which is, if you look at them, which is what you'll see. We could not provide you with the red line version because we basically reworked the entire policy based on new definitions under Title IX. So what this policy allows us to do is, in the absence of, it references Title IX so that if there is a specific complaint with regards to sexual harassment, a person is immediately notified that you need to check in with the Title IX coordinator, and that process is checked off. When that process does not apply, we need to have a better policy in place for sexual harassment, which is why this has been created. And sorry for the lack of a red line, but it was almost impossible. I worked specifically with outside counsel who also supported us in getting the Title IX policy updated. So this specifically aligns to what we already have in place with Title IX and puts us in a better protective position for when we do have a sexual harassment complaint that does not fall under Title IX.
I move to approve both item B and C.
Yes, second.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, then let's call a question. And let's see, will that be 2 votes?
No, the motions to approve GBAA and JI is to approve both of them.
Great, thank you. All right. No, we've got the motion carries. All right, thank you. Now we'll move on to policy 7D and 7E, and we'll take these one at a time in case there are questions. Policy CFA is just a couple of modifications to refer to other policies in the manual and to add one of the prime responsibilities of the principal that's referred to in policy GCF. I'll entertain a motion.
And the reason for the change is just to reference in this policy, policy GCF and, well, policy GCF and CSE.
Yes, but also to make sure that the list of responsibilities includes one which is mentioned in policy GCF.
Is the principals not included in the hiring process now? And what does that change? I mean, employment of school level professional staff consistent with policy GCF. What, by adding that, what did we change?
I don't believe we changed anything, but Mr. Brigman may want to speak to it.
We did not change anything during the reference to the policy.
Okay. Thank you.
I think, do we have a motion yet?
No, well, we can ask questions about a motion. I'm sorry, if I might ask you a question. So my question is, or if the statement of question is, based on what I know after 6 years being on the board about these policies, I have some heartburn about adding consistent with policies, adding consistent with policies, GCF and CSD and like that. I don't have a problem with adding that sentence about prime responsibility of employment of school level professional staff, period. But adding the consistent with, this gives me consternation that then if we continue to do that with all of the policies and then we make a change to GCF or CSC, we then have to come back and see, okay, what are the policies where we reference that? So I feel like we're creating more work than we need to. What are you trying to accomplish by adding that consistent with policy XYZ?
Well, some of the information that are in those other policies isn't detailed here. This makes it so you don't have to change this policy if it relies on another one.
Yeah, I'm still uncomfortable. I mean, I think policy GFC addresses what policy GFC addresses and CSC addresses what CSC addresses. But I support this if it didn't have the consistent with the, I'm fine with that other thing, but I don't see the need to add those because I feel like then we either do that across the board with all the policies or not. So that's just my personal. That's why I asked the question because I wasn't sure.
And I, if I may, I have a question. So my question is kind of the same. Staff has to follow every hiring policy when they hire. And likewise, staff has to follow every sexual harassment policy should sexual harassment occur. And they have to do, they're not allowed not to follow those policies. So I think that it's not necessary to say consistent with other policies, because if you do it with this, then you're going to do it with transfers, consistent with other policies, and it will create a point where somebody's going to change a policy that has an unintended or a backdoor intended consequence on an originating policy. I think that it doesn't solve a problem. I think it's the same thing I said before. The problem that it's trying to solve, there's no problem that exists. So I really don't feel the need to do this and then have to spend the next 36 months making sure that we go back every single time something changes, that we didn't miss something as a board. I think we have much heavier workload ahead of us.
Okay.
And I have a question about bullet 9 and 10.
Could you just read the first part of the phrases?
Overseeing the local special, the principal, responsibilities of the principal. Does the principal oversee the local, special revenue, state, federal, and grant budgets within the guidelines and direction of the, and then secondly, Financial Services Department of the School District. Is
It's just
that-
a mistake. There may be a typo in that bullet.
That bullet should not, the financial should follow the word the.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just a
But
scrivener's
does the
error.
principal, is it the responsibility of the principal to oversee the local special revenue, state, federal, and grant budget?
With, with direction from the financial department, yes, and there
Okay.
are some federal grants that the principal has to weigh in on first
Okay.
before we are permitted
Direction
to.
of the Financial Services Department, okay.
Yes,
So, Dr. Franklin, would you be
Good
open
catch.
to me making a motion to make the change with just adding the employment school level professional staff period, or do you want it?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so I move to approve policy CFA, adding under prime responsibility for the principal to do the following: employment of school level professional staff period.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Then shall we call the question? Oh, yeah. just typing it out loud.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right, so. All right, the motion passes. The last one is policy CFC, assignment and transfer of school principals. And this one also has a couple of references to policy GCF, but we can, I will entertain them, and also policy BB, which, anyway, those references can be left out if that makes the body more comfortable considering.
So I'll make a motion to approve the policy with the red lines, but without the references to the other policies. They're taking out policy BB, taking out consistent with policy GCF, and the second consistent with GCF, but adding the other word.
I have a
All right.
question. Well, I guess we can.
Yes, so somebody.
Do I hear a second?
Yes. Somebody can.
I'll second and ask my
Okay.
question.
Okay. Thank you.
The bullet point that says, that crosses out administrators and puts transferees, express preferences. I'm wondering why we didn't just add a second bullet and put administrators and transferees express preferences, because, you're gonna naturally have both of those things happen in the hiring process anyway.
Oh, well, I think that, when I think we discussed it with Mr. Brigman, the administrator's preference is referenced above by the superintendent shall give consideration to the academic and leadership needs of the school district, which I believe includes, so
So
yeah.
we'd make-
And in the case of assistant principals, the principal shall be consulted. Does that cover what your concern?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes. Here I have 2 copies of this policy, CFC. And both copies have been redlined.
Well, look at the one on your board docs, because that's the most current one.
Well, this one left out. But this one, it said, yeah,
I think that's different.
this is different from what I have. CFC.
Yeah, that is.
This is, what is this policy, CFC? I see the one that we have on board docs,
Yeah, but this.
but
yeah,
it's
that's it.
different.
That's it. So what my motion is to add, to keep that in there, but to take out the references to the other policies.
Well, why? Why is my CFC different?
I don't know.
I think you may have the one
From
that was
December.
from December meeting, and that one is no longer
Yeah,
the one that we're
yeah.
considering.
So right here. is,
There's CFC is over.
Nope, it's this
Yeah.
one right there.
Okay.
There you go. That's it.
Okay, all righty. Okay.
Any other questions? Ms. Coakley, did you have anything to add?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, I'll call the question.
Yes. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
And you can just leave those open and just click on that.
Yeah, okay.
All right, thank you. The motion passes, and I'll hand the meeting back over to Ms. Darby.
Okay, so I guess based on our votes today, we have consent items to go on the consent agenda, 6A, 7A, 7B, 7C, 7D, and 7E, is that correct?
Sounds correct to me.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So can I just get a motion that those items will go on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do you have a second?
I think Ms. Lauren seconded or.
All in favor, signify by saying
Aye.
Aye.
and the other business, board ad hoc meeting.
Yes, so I'd like to take this opportunity to appoint a ad hoc committee that will be tasked with examining the options for legislative advocacy for Charleston County schools and making a recommendation back to the full board regarding the most effective way to proceed. So to just a timeline, actually, I'm going to be recommending that it is due back to the board at the February committee of the whole meeting instead of March that's currently listed. And I'm going to appoint Ms. Coates, Ms. Waters, and Ms. Hederick. And I'm going to ask Ms. Coates if she would chair that ad hoc committee for me. And I'm hopeful that you can have a return time. This shouldn't take long at all, putting this together. Ms. Green, you have a question?
Yeah, is this for this, legislative year? I mean, would they be dealing with a strategy?
Next.
For this, or not for 2021?
Because session already started, right? Right. So, and
if you want to do that, it might be more. Rev it up a little bit because I'm sorry, but they was at the session, today.
right, actually today. All right. So,
And so in terms of legislation and that kind of stuff, you know, I
right.
just wanted to make sure.
Yes, ma'am. Duly noted, and I believe the three members have heard exactly what you just said. So that's, and I asked for a quicker turnaround time for February committee of the whole, please. All right, that was Darby.
Okay, closing items, our upcoming meetings, you all can see what those are, don't need to read them to you. If you have any questions about that, I'm glad to listen to the adjourned meeting.
So moved.
All in favor?
All right.
Meeting adjourned.